What was Jewish about your home growing up?
Not much. My mother was a red communist. She didn't have a card, but she was what I call an armchair communist. In other words, she waved the red flag. All her friends were Stalinists. But when the checks came in from the dividends from the stocks, she put them in the bank. So that's an armchair communist.
So did she go to meetings? Did you meet her friends?
You know what she? Well. I'll have to explain to you how this happened. She belonged to the American Labor Party. American Labor Party was not a communist party, but there were a lot of proto-communists involved in that bunch. And toward the end of the American Labor Party's checkered career, it became more and more left. And my mother and all her pals were very, very left-wing types. And okay, they this and that and the other thing, and the Jewish business was soft-pedaled. My grandfather, my mother's father, used to go to ball games on Yom Kippur. So he didn't want to know from it at all. My mother had two brothers, younger brothers. She was the oldest. And they didn't want to know from it either. Now my father, his father had gone to a synagogue which was populated by Lubavitch types. But before Lubavitch came here in large numbers, this goes back to 1908, 1907, 1906, whatever it was. And my father got some Hebrew training at a synagogue in Williamsburg, which they davened Nusach Ari, which is the Lubavitch thing. Not Ashkenaz, not Sfard, but Nusach Ari, which is something that only the Lubavitch do. So my grandfather was obviously, involved. Maybe it was only because he went to that particular synagogue. I don't know. I couldn't ask him because he was gone by the time I came around. And my father had little to say about that. He didn't say how religious he was, how religious he wasn't. My father was a first-generation American in every way. He didn't want to know from it. And my mother certainly didn't want to know from it. But her father, who came from the other side, didn't want to know from it. But my grandfather, on my father's side, did something. So my father learned, because when he was reading Hebrew, and he didn't read Hebrew around us very often, when we were younger, some of the Seders, he would pronounce the O as if it were A, and that's what Lubavitch do. In other words, instead of Shalom, they pronounce Shalem. That's the Lubavitch way of pronouncing it. And that was his training, came from that. And he also studied his bar mitzvah with the uncle I was telling you about, my great uncle Shmuel Moshe, who was the only religious one in that part of the family. So their relationship with religion was, there was no Shabbos. There was no kashrus there. They didn't observe anything at all. There was, we had Hanukkah candles. Grandma would come over and give us Hanukkah gelt.
Pesach?
Pesach we had, but something, it wasn't a real Pesach, because as we got on over that, my mother used to bring chametz into the house on Pesach. So it was the Seder, we didn't have it, but later on it disappeared completely. And all I can say is that I, as a one generation removed, didn't want to know from it. And as soon as I went, they put me in Hebrew school at the Brooklyn Jewish Center, which was conservative. The kinds of teachers that I had were not religious in orientation at all. They were teaching like Israeli type Hebrew, Mechonit, Baruch Atah, the Sephardi pronunciation and all that. And I was not turned on by these particular teachers. So by the time I was bar mitzvah, I never went back to Hebrew school again. That was all. But I was a decent student. I could have done fairly well with it, but it just wasn't there.